You're listening to WTMFI 67.42 FM Chicago.
Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, all. Welcome in. Perfect. Welcome in. Chris, welcome in. Desiree, Gerard, welcome in. This is Turbo TJ, TJ Fanpool, coming to you live from WTMFI 67.42 FM Chicago. And it's time for the Star Wars Fact of the Day Week in Review. For those of you following my channel, I do Star Wars Facts of the Day, one fact every day, Monday through Friday. And at the end of the week, I do a full review of all the facts and go into the detail about each of the facts. A little bit about myself. I'm a diehard Star Wars fan. For those of you who are new to this broadcast, I love Star Wars, been a Star Wars fan ever since I was a kid, and collected Star Wars, read Star Wars, lived Star Wars. I've done absolutely everything possible to do with Star Wars, except, of course, travel to see Galaxy's Edge, which is on my bucket list of things to do, but unfortunately finances are not within my purview of availability right now, but someday I hope to get there. But, this week I focused because of Maul's Shadow Lord premiering on Disney Plus. I decided to do this week and focus exclusively on Darth Maul's material. So I went into a lot of research on this. I went through both StarWars.com, Wikipedia.com, and made sure I got as much facts as I could without, going too much into obscure facts, because I wanted to make sure all my information was straight. Stranger, welcome in. I'm sorry, I can't read that symbol, but welcome in. Good, welcome in. So the material I have for this week is focused primarily on Darth Maul, and I hope most of the information I got was pretty well known. The majority of my information I didn't pull from the books that came out. There were a lot of books that came out during the EU period, and unfortunately, because a lot of that has been retconned, I didn't want to access a lot of that, though there's some really good information. If you're interested in finding out some of the obscure facts about Darth Maul, there's a plethora of books out there that are available, but I wanted to really focus on the stuff that's actual factual. So I referenced a lot of stuff from StarWars.com, filled in some of the blanks from Wikipedia, but also from my own knowledge, because I was a huge fan of Clone Wars. Tide, welcome in. Mr. Skunk, welcome in. And I wanted to make sure that I verified my facts before I posted them, because I loved watching the Maul stuff on Star Wars Clone Wars, just from just the stuff on Savage Opress and Darth Sidious and the tie-ins to Mandalore, and of course the final battle of Clone Wars where it's Ahsoka versus Maul. I mean, that was one of my favorite lightsaber battles. I mean, I loved all the lightsaber battles in Clone Wars, but that particular one was so good. And the fact that, of course, if you looked at the behind the scenes, you saw that Ray Parker, who was the original stunt guy for Darth Maul and did the lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace, they brought him in to do the mocap for Maul. So that was the real Maul that we were seeing in that combat, which I just thought was so cool. For those of you that didn't know that, I highly recommend going back and watching the finale of Clone Wars and meticulously watch that fight between Ahsoka and Maul. And if you've watched, Star Wars Clone Wars from the beginning to end, you can definitely see the variations in the way the combat is done. I mean, it's obvious for me just because I watched all the lightsaber battles and the way they were done. And you can really see that there is a different flow in that particular lightsaber battle, because it just seems smoother, and just the way the blades were flying around. I mean, there's just an angle to that was not in the rest of the series. I mean, they did a great job doing the lightsaber battles throughout it, but you could really see the difference in that final battle, where it was like the culmination of all the technology, and the mocap was finally brought to bear for that particular fight, and they just did a fantastic job. All right, so enough indulging in the fun. Let's get into the facts. So I've got my slideshow ready here. So let's go through the facts of the day for the week. Okay, first fact of the day, Star Wars fact of the day. Maul was a Force-sensitive Dathomirian Zabrak male and son of Mother Talzin of the Night Sisters, who was abducted by Darth Sidious. Maul was trained in the ways of the dark side. Oh, sorry, BB-8. He became Darth Sidious's apprentice. Sorry, I have my sound set up on there. Hang on one sec. Shoot, my screen got a little screwed up. Okay. Yeah, my screen really got screwed up. Hang on one second. My additional facts, unfortunately, were not flowing on the screen there. I wanted to make sure I had this straight. Unfortunately, sometimes my screen gets screwed up. All right, here we go. Darth Maul was a formidable warrior, strong with the dark side, possessing deadly skills in lightsaber combat, as well as scheming mastermind fueled by a quest for revenge against the Jedi. Best known for wielding an intimidating double-bladed lightsaber and fighting with a menacing ferocity, he was the apprentice of Darth Sidious. He was the apprentice that Darth Sidious needed to instill fear and intimidation in everyone he encountered. During the events of Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, the Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo, Maul encountered two Jedi, Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maul was able to defeat the Jedi Master, but fell in battle against Obi-Wan Kenobi. But the Zabrak from Dathomir proved to be much harder to destroy. Though he vanished for years, Darth Maul would make his return. So I'm sure a lot of you have already seen Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which 16 years of waiting, we finally got that movie. I remember sitting and watching the trailer for it when I forget what it was. It was either right after the Academy Awards or it was during another event where that trailer came up. I was down in my basement watching the stuff because I didn't watch a lot of stuff with my parents, but I was overjoyed. Nobody really cared that I was down in the basement watching it, but I was thrilled that we finally got a teaser for the new Star Wars movie, and I loved every second of it. I was so happy. I was so excited for it. And the fact that I saw just a glimpse of Darth Maul, it was like, oh, that was so good. But yeah, so for this particular fact, I know I've already gotten some comments about this and some direct messages about the fact that I included that Maul was the son of Mother Talzin. Now, this is something that technically has not been done in the actual lore, canon-wise. It's listed on Wikipedia, but I actually went back and I actually looked through. We don't actually see anywhere in that Maul is actually Mother Talzin's son, but the information is there, and I believe it was referenced in one of the EU books. Now, whether or not it actually is true is not 100%. There's like a 99% fact that it is absolutely true, but there might be the 1% where Filoni comes in and says, no, that's not what it happened. But I have a feeling that's what it is because enough people and enough clues were laid in during the story of Savage Opress that make me think that Maul was his actual son. And the thing about Darth Sidious abducting him, that is actually goes with his character because, as many of you know, this is referenced in both Clone Wars and in Star Wars Rebels, that Sidious had been repeatedly kidnapping Force-sensitive children while they were still young and converting them into his assassins, his sleeper agents, and his inquisitors. So, this information, though slightly vague, does make sense. And the fact that Maul was from Dathomir, it does make sense. And Mother Talzin would be a relation to him, though it could have been in a different way. We don't know how the whole process of Zabrakian males are born and how they're raised and all that. We got a glimpse of it in the Clone Wars during the events with the Night Sisters, specifically with her name just slipped out of my head. I hate when that happens. I can't believe it. Her name just slipped out of my head, and unfortunately, I can't remember it right now. Hang on. Asajj Ventress. Thank you. I had to glance over my notes to actually remember. Asajj Ventress was actually a major part of Savage Opress. So that's where we really find out about how Zabrak males are actually brought into power through the Night Sisterhood. Now, a lot of people don't know a lot about the Night Sisters due to the fact that they weren't really referenced that much in the original trilogy, but we get more about the Night Sisters in the novels of the EU. The very first touch we get of them is the novel The Courtship of Princess Leia, which is the very first appearance of the Night Sisters in the EU. Granted, there were a few comic books that did reference them, and brought up the subject, but we didn't get an actual story about them until The Courtship of Princess Leia. And I know there's a lot of people don't like that book because, yeah, exactly. A lot of people don't really recognize that. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize everybody that came in. Thank you so much for joining. Sorry if I didn't mention you by name. So the Night Sisters really came into fruition and really became a part of Star Wars during the EU, during the Courtship of Princess Leia. And there were members of the Night Sisters that did join Luke's Jedi Academy. So I don't remember the exact names, and unfortunately, a lot of them have been lost to the EU. But there are a lot of them that could be referenced to that. And that's also our first encounter with the Wild Rancors. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in getting into a lot of those facts, research it on Wikipedia. Definitely pick up Courtship of Princess Leia. It's a great book, regardless of the fact that it's not canon. But I highly recommend it because it's a really good book. All right, so let's move on to the next fact of the week. Star Wars fact of the day. Savage Opress was a Force-sensitive Dathomirian. During the Clone Wars, Count Dooku, who was Darth Sidious's new apprentice, requested a new assassin from Mother Talzin of the Night Sisters. Mother Talzin sent the warrior Savage Opress, who was a monstrous warrior with skills in the Force. Under the tutelage of Asajj Ventress, Savage would be feared by all those he encountered. He was used by Ventress to enact a revenge plot to kill Count Dooku. Afterward, he returned to Mother Talzin, who sent Savage Opress to recover his long-lost brother, Maul. Savage completed his quest, but Maul was driven almost to the brink of insanity by his injuries and his thirst for revenge against Obi-Wan Kenobi. Savage Opress brought Maul back to Mother Talzin on Dathomir, who used her sister's magic to restore Maul's mind and his legs, which had been severed at the waist by Obi-Wan Kenobi, but she restored them with battle droid legs. Maul began his pursuit of revenge against Kenobi, but this resulted in additional defeats, leaving Maul and his now apprentice Savage Opress adrift in space. Now, a lot of this is not really referenced in a lot of books. There are a few books that came out afterwards, but most of this material is from Star Wars Clone Wars. I unfortunately don't have the exact episodes, but you could easily find these episodes because they were done all in a row I want to say it was season 3, but I could be wrong about that. It was either season 3 or season 2. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it's most likely season 3 was where we first see Savage Opress and his birth and the whole process of how Savage Opress becomes Count Dooku's assassin. And you really get the understanding of what Dathomirian men went through in order to be part of the Sisterhood. Because the Sisterhood was primarily women, like the actual Night Sisters. So the men weren't really part of that other than being guards and warriors for them. So I really thought that was a cool aspect about that. It was very a matriarchal society where the women were pretty much in charge. And I really like that aspect because there's not a lot of that in Star Wars. And we see a lot of references to this. If for those of you that were fans of the Star Wars Acolytes, the Jedi actually... Yeah, exactly, Homer. They actually encounter a Night Sister group on the planet that takes place during Acolyte. I unfortunately haven't referenced the planet and all that, but that was where we actually get the reference for that. And there was a lot of Force sensitivity formed in Dathomirian males and females. So it wasn't that they weren't separated from the Force. They just were a different aspect of the Force. They weren't exactly Sith, though. That's what a lot of people make the assumption, is that the Night Sisters were Sith. They weren't. In a sense, they were their own society that used magic that was on a variant level of the Force, that actually used the Force. And you can research this on your own in StarWars.com and Wikipedia, that this information is available there, that Sith magic was not, in essence, evil. If you really look into the research on it, it is a variant not thereof the Sith, but of something completely separate. Because in essence, the Night Sisters weren't really evil, and we really get this if you've got a chance to play Star Wars Fallen Order. You really get the essence that the Sith and the Night Sisters were not exactly the same thing. They were two separate parts. So I there's a lot more detail on it that unfortunately I don't have time to go into, but I highly recommend looking into it because it's really interesting. I know there's a lot of fans out there that really have delved deep into the Night Sisterhood and what it's all about in the society and all that. There's not a lot of material that's canon, but there's more than enough to actually show interest in it. So I highly recommend looking into it. Okay, we'll move into the next fact of the day. So, Star Wars fact of the day. After defeated by Kenobi on Florum, Maul and Savage Opress floated in space. They were recovered by the Mandalorian group Death Watch, led by Pre Vizsla and his lieutenant Bo-Katan Kryze. Maul and Pre Vizsla realized they shared common goals and decided to partner to gain what they needed. Maul worked with Vizsla to form alliances with the Black Sun Organization, the Hutt's Council, and the Pike Syndicate. They now gained enough forces to commit a siege against Mandalore, and Pre Vizsla was able to gain the throne of Mandalore from then Duchess Satine Kryze, Bo-Katan's sister. Maul and Savage Opress then betrayed Pre Vizsla, and Maul defeated him in combat, claiming the throne of Mandalore for himself. This brought in Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was a longtime love interest of Duchess Satine. Maul murdered Duchess Satine and drove Kenobi and the remnants of Death Watch, including Bo-Katan, away from Mandalore, securing his power as Lord of Mandalore and the Shadow Collective. Now, this I thought was one of the coolest things about the story of Maul. Even though he has been dismissed from Sidious, assumed to be dead, he's still using the power that he was given by Mother Talzin. He is able to not only stand up to Kenobi, even though he was defeated, but he is able to be a strong enough ally that the Mandalorians realized he could be useful. And the fact that Maul, being who he is, and Pre Vizsla, for the time, they were both interested in two very specific things that really made them come together and work well together. Searching for power and honor. Now, there's an aspect to this that it's not really seen on, is that Maul has his own variant of honor, and that's doing his devotion to his master. Now, the whole time that we see Maul doing all this, he's trying, because first he tried to take on Obi-Wan by himself. You know, he had Savage Opress with him, but he tried to do it as one-on-one, and he was defeated. Now, we get this in the episode that Maul realizes his mistake, and thankfully he didn't lose so much that he wasn't able to get away with his mistake, but he realized what he did wrong. He realized that he was not strong enough to take on Kenobi and to put it into a situation where he had the advantage. He thought that he could take on Kenobi on whatever ground that he was on, but he found out the hard way, and he didn't learn this from his last encounter with Kenobi, that he needs to have an advantage in any situation, because in a one-on-one lightsaber fight, he actually took Obi-Wan to a nearest level, but his overconfidence was the reason why he lost that fight. And he found out that again in his second encounter with Kenobi. So this is where we really see Maul come to the realization that he needs to increase his power, which goes with the traditions of the Sith, is that they seek power to gain advantage over their opponents. So this is where Maul really shows that he understands how to be a Sith, is that he decided to partner with Pre Vizsla in order to gain the power he needed, but he was honorable enough to know that Pre Vizsla did have the power that Maul needed, and the only way he could get that power was to wait, to be patient, to wait for that opportunity to finally steal that power for himself, which, again, traditional Sith. He honors the way the Sith do things. He actually saw the opportunity to finally get at Kenobi. And I'm not sure, this isn't something they really touch on, but it could be, and I can't remember exactly from the episode, if Pre Vizsla actually mentions that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Duchess Satine had a relationship, because Pre Vizsla was a former governor of Mandalore, so there's information that he probably already knew, and he probably passed this information on. I think it's actually mentioned in the episode, but I don't remember exactly. So I would say that that would be a great reference point to actually go and check. I'm going to have to go back and watch the series because I've watched it a few times, but I haven't watched it recently. Work schedule and all that. But I highly recommend if you have a chance to actually go back to Clone Wars and watch the episode specifically with Death Watch, Pre Vizsla, Bo-Katan, and Maul. All of it's built up really well. And the fun thing is, the interesting thing is Pre Vizsla is so blinded by his course for power, he does not see. He thinks he sees what Maul's up to, but he doesn't listen to his strongest advisor, which was Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan saw what was going on. She could see what Maul was doing, and she had the opportunity to warn him and warned him multiple times, but Pre Vizsla was so overconfident and so focused on his quest to get reigns on Mandalore and restoring the original Mandalorian warrior creed that he didn't see what was happening to him. He didn't see the darkness that was surrounding him. And that was what it came down to in the end. He was so confident that he knew what he was doing, he didn't see that Maul was actually playing him. And the really cool part about this is the creation of the Shadow organization, that the Shadow Collective that Maul creates with 3 criminal organizations. I mean, this was amazing. And the fact that he was able to work all this and make it work for him was so incredible. And just the way the Pikes and Black Sun worked so well with it. I mean, you see in the episodes that the Hutts were not happy about this. They did not want any part of this, but unfortunately they got brought in. And in the end, it actually worked to their advantage to actually team up with Maul in the long run, because it really gave them an aspect of power, because it gave them a reputation that they were a lot stronger than people realized. And I think that's really what was the cool thing about the Shadow Collective, is that we saw the Pikes, Black Sun, and the Hutts gain a lot of reputation that they didn't have before. And also they realized that organizing and working together, they could gain a huge hold on the galaxy, which they did. I mean, the Shadow Collective was a massive force for a long period of time. And the fact that they were able to help retake an entire planet shows just how strong they really were. And I always wonder to myself, because it's not technically covered in the story, but there is a lot more going on behind the scenes on Mandalore than we actually know about that Maul was involved with, which brings us to the next fact of the day. Star Wars fact of the day. After the coup of Mandalore, Maul's Shadow Collective had gained a massive hold on the galaxy's criminal underground. Darth Sidious, Maul's former master, came to Mandalore. Maul knelt before his master and admitted he had done all of this to prove his worth to his master. Darth Sidious was impressed, but declared that Maul had now become a rival to his plans. Maul, Savage Opress, and Darth Sidious engaged in a fierce battle. Sidious killed Savage Opress and subdued Maul. Darth Sidious allowed Maul to live, but he was forced to stay. Exactly, Homer. He was forced to stay on Mandalore and not interfere with Lord Sidious's plans. Maul remained in command of the Shadow Collective and Mandalore until the planet was invaded by Bo-Katan Kryze's Mandalorian forces, former Jedi Ahsoka Tano, along with a large army of clone forces led by Commander Rex of the 501st Legion. After several massive battles between the clones and Mandalorians, Maul was defeated by Ahsoka Tano, captured, and taken into custody. Maul would then escape during the confusion of Darth Sidious's Order 66. Now, I know a lot of people would love for me to go into more detail on that, and I'm gonna work on another fact about that, because I haven't started watching Maul Dark Lord or Shadow Lord yet. I am planning on it, but I'm of a particular person that I like to wait until the whole thing is out so then I can binge the whole thing, because I'm patient. I can wait. So the interesting things about this particular fact, and I really enjoyed researching this one because I actually went back and I actually watched a lot of the episodes. Oh, BB-8. Yep, I know. I'm running out of time. I know. I'm going as fast as I can. So the really interesting aspects about this fight, specifically the battle between Maul, Darth Sidious, and Savage Opress, that fight was one of my favorites. I mean, the battles that you get to see, the lightsaber battles, especially with, characters like where it's a one-on-one match, like, for example, Ahsoka versus General Grievous. There's some really great fights there. But this particular one, where it was Maul and Savage Opress, these two should have been more than enough to take down Sidious. But the thing about it was, and you really got this from the fight, is you saw that Savage and Maul, they were more focused on their lightsaber skills, which was really a detriment to them, because what they should have done was force their wills against Sidious and really tried to take him down that way. But they focused more on their lightsaber skills in trying to take down Sidious, which to their detriment was a fail, because Darth Sidious has proven he is extraordinarily skilled with a lightsaber. We saw this in Revenge of the Sith at the finale, where Darth Sidious takes on the Jedi, and he takes them all out except for Mace Windu. Mace Windu was the only one that was actually able to go toe-to-toe with him and gain an advantage. And you really saw that. So going into this fight, you already knew. If you had already seen the prequel trilogy, the finale, you knew that Darth Sidious was already an ace when it came to lightsaber combat. He was a master. And even though he trained Maul, Maul had not really, and this is something I don't think a lot of people notice, Maul and Savage Opress did not spar that much. So what made you think that Maul had expanded his lightsaber skills since he was an apprentice? This is something a lot of people forget about, is that Maul had never trained with anybody other than Darth Sidious. And he had only gotten to a certain point. He was already a master swordsman, but he wasn't as strong as Sidious because he never defeated Sidious. And this is that fight where we actually see that even though there were two of them, and even though Maul had an advantage of having an apprentice, he was not strong enough to take on Sidious. Though there were a few moments where it looked like he could succeed, especially when he pulled out the Darksaber and started going 2-2 with Sidious. I mean, it really looked like Maul might have just enough anger and just enough skill to be able to take on Sidious, but it was obvious right from the get-go that Maul was skating uphill. He had no chance against Sidious. But the interesting thing is that Sidious didn't kill him. And I thought that was so interesting, because in the long run, Sidious already had figured out that Maul was not a real hindrance to his plans. Because if you see how the whole Clone Wars ended up, Maul stayed on Mandalore, and he still continued to try to draw someone in. He was hoping to get Kenobi, and he got Kenobi, and he was able to basically send him off. But we never actually got the fight that I know a lot of people would have liked, was the fight between Anakin Skywalker and Maul. We never got that. And I honestly was kind of hoping the fact that when we finally get to see Ahsoka and Maul come face to face, I mean, it's kind of like, it would have been really cool, just from my personal opinion, if we had seen Starkiller at some point come in, because I would have loved to have seen Starkiller and Maul have some fights together, because that would have been cool. But you really get that aspect of Ahsoka and Maul, Darth Sidious's apprentice, Vader's apprentice, and it's like you really saw, and that's what the quintessential part of this is. This is the guy, Maul, who Darth Sidious had trained, and Vader trained Ahsoka. Anakin trained Ahsoka. And I'm just thinking to myself, dude, this literally shows us what would have happened if Anakin had not fallen. He would have been able to take Sidious. Now, granted, Maul was not able to defeat Sidious, but I have a feeling that because there was so much that Anakin didn't teach Ahsoka, that there was a little bit of extra skill that Anakin had as Vader, that if Anakin Skywalker, not Vader, if Anakin Skywalker had taken on Darth Sidious, I think Anakin would have won. And that's something that a lot of people, I would love that if Disney ever decides to take a page out of Marvel's book and finally does a what if series. That would be glorious because we could finally have the confrontations that everybody has always wanted to see. And I hope someday we get that. I don't know if we ever will, but I would love a Star Wars what if. And we actually play out all the different scenarios of what would have happened if certain things had gone a certain way, because I think that would have been super cool. Okay, so moving on to the last fact of the day. Star Wars fact of the day. This scimitar, also known as the Sith Infiltrator, was the personal starship of Darth Maul. Featuring folding wings around a spherical cockpit, this modified star courier was manufactured by Republic Sinar Systems. A fittingly fearsome vessel for its deadly pilot, Maul used this sleek ship to silently travel wherever his master Darth Sidious ordered. The infiltrator set down on Tatooine during the search for Queen Amidala in Phantom Menace and became a mobile base of operations for Maul. From his starship, he launched a trio of Sith probe droids to seek out the Queen and her Jedi protectors. Once found, he unloaded his swift Sith speeder to pursue his quarry. After his first encounter with Qui-Gon Jinn on Tatooine, Darth Sidious dispatched Maul to Naboo. And this is referenced in the movie. After his defeat during the Battle of Naboo, the expendable starfighter was appropriated by Maul's master, Darth Sidious. And I always wondered about this because, Maul had to land that somewhere where it wouldn't be easily found. So, most likely, after the events, or it could have been pre the events, because at the end of Phantom Menace, we see Chancellor Palpatine comes to Naboo for the final celebration, because Palpatine, a lot of people forget about this. Palpatine was actually, his birth planet was Naboo, as far as we understand it. Now, granted, there's more details that are revealed in a lot of the novels that were done for the EU about Palpatine, but as far as we understand it, he's actually from Naboo. So I always thought that was kind of interesting that the first planet we encounter in the prequel trilogy is Naboo, which is the birthplace of the Emperor. And I thought that was really kind of a cool thing to bring up, and that he's the representative of the planet. And I just always thought that was really cool. And the first time we actually hear the word Palpatine is when the Naboo are planning to escape from the planet and they need to go to Coruscant. And I just thought that was super cool. But the starship that we get to see, the Scimitar, that actually shows up when Darth Maul is first dispatched to Tatooine, and I really like to look at that ship. Now, people just automatically assumed it was an early version of a TIE fighter, which isn't completely wrong, because we know that was the company that actually eventually will design the TIE fighter. So that's pretty cool in and of itself. And I always thought it was a really cool ship. The look of it was really cool. Even the Lego set of the Scimitar was really cool. I mean, it's called the Sith Infiltrator, but I just thought it was super cool. And someone pointed out to me when I posted this fact, the Scimitar, as a lot of people know, it is a form of sword. And I just thought it was kind of a cool reference because in Ahsoka, when we encounter the Night Sisters, one of the swords that they pass out is the blade of of Talzin, and that is an actual scimitar. Now, it didn't work exactly like a lightsaber, but it was similar to the form. If you look at the way the sword actually is formed, it does look like a scimitar. Though there's variations on the scimitars in the way they're hilt and the actual blade itself, the width and stuff like that. But it is in the form of a scimitar sword. So I always thought that was kind of cool, foreshadowing that the ship that Darth Maul flies is a scimitar, and then the Night Sisters' Talzin blade is a scimitar in itself. So that's all that little touchback to the Night Sisters, I always thought was really cool. So I really love these little intricate things that you find out when you start doing this research. And that's the reason why I always recommend people look this stuff up for themselves, reference this material, because I do my research, but I want to make sure that I inspire people to actually look this stuff up because it's really interesting. And once you find out one little fact, other little details start popping up. And it's really fun to get to read these kinds of things, especially when you're a Star Wars fan. And I really enjoyed reading through this stuff and researching all these things. And I really love passing it on to everybody because it's so much fun to talk about, and I just really enjoy it a lot. So again, that's pretty much my run through of my facts. So that's all the facts for this week. I really hope you all enjoyed listening to my rant about all this stuff. I really have a love of Star Wars that this is just a lot of fun for me. And a lot of my details that I look up and reference is because I actually have really enjoyed Star Wars for so long. And there's so much material about Star Wars that you could really spend years and years researching this material. And you would find so much material that you wouldn't know what was fact and what was, canon. And it's a lot of fun to actually do the research and find the stuff to reference. And Wikipedia has always been really knowledgeable about this thing, and people have been really good about making sure that a lot of the material is factual. And they've even added the part onto Wikipedia.com where there's a marking for both canon and legends, so you actually can know what is actually Disney canon and what is EU legends. And I always like referencing both because, Lana, welcome in. There's so much involved with the facts of Star Wars and the canon that you can easily get lost between the two. So a lot of my material that I try and show is both referenced in legends but also is canonized, so you have more than enough material to actually research and make up your own mind. I mean, I'm not saying that my stuff is 100% technical actual, because I don't work for Disney. I'm not working in the rooms, figuring out what they do. My facts, exactly, Chopper. Thank you so much for keeping me in line. I'm basically just referencing a lot of the material that I look up on my own, but it's also based on my own opinion. And I've always considered myself a very leveled Star Wars fan. I don't say that my information is better than anybody else's. I always make sure that my material associates a lot of other people's opinions on things. So there's so much more about Star Wars that you can find out just by looking it up online. And there's no reason to not look it up and make sure that your information is correct. Because I've been in a lot of conversations with other Star Wars fans, and they'll correct me on things, and I don't mind that at all. I have no problem being played wrong as long as the information is factual and not something just someone's throwing out to throw somebody off. As long as the information is factual, I'll look it up and I'll find out for myself. I mean, I always make sure that my information is as correct as I possibly can make it. Granted, there are a few things that I will reference that technically aren't canon, but there's enough information there to go with the belief that it is fact, because a lot of the stuff references another aspect of Star Wars that follows in line. And I always follow a lot of the doctrine that George Lucas started from the beginning, that all of this, everything in Star Wars has to do with balance. And I've always followed through on that, and the understanding of how Star Wars works is that there has to be a balance between the light and the dark, which is the reason why I love the Night Sisters and the Sith, is because there is a little bit of a difference between the two, enough that there's almost a light and dark to the Sith and the Night Sisters. Not per se that the Night Sisters are the light or that the Sith is the dark. There's a little bit of push and pull between the two, almost like a yin and a yang between the two, because there was a lot of animosity between Mother Talzin and Count Dooku, and you really got that. And I think it's not really referenced that much, but I have a feeling that there was some animosity between Mother Talzin and Sidious as well, because Dooku had his own opinion about that, but I wonder if there was a reason why Count Dooku had his view on it, is he may have had an encounter with the Night Sisters when he was still becoming a Jedi. And maybe that's the reason why he had such an animosity to it. Tori, welcome in. And I really like that aspect about it because it really gave a different view. 978, welcome in. And I really thought that was super cool. So I'm finished up with my facts. For any of you who want to reference these, you can find them on my account. I'm going to be loading this whole broadcast up to my link that I have on my profile, so you'll be able to watch the whole thing for anybody who came in late. And you, welcome in. All right, so now on to the new part of the week. So this is a new aspect that I'm adding on. This week we're going to do a special quiz that is going to be part of the broadcast. So let me just get my reference in place. All right, so this is Are You a True Star Wars Fan? The Galactic Knowledge Test, accessing secure files. Test your mastery of creatures, starfighters, and the criminal world. Created by Abby of the Dark Side and TJ Fanpool. So this is something that Abby and I have been working on together. So she's been referencing my facts, and she came up with this. I am so grateful to Abby of the Dark Side for helping me out with this. So we're going to get started with this. So the rules of this are, this is primarily for you in the chat. So I know a lot of you have let it comment and make your presence known. This is your opportunity to really show up. This is going to be a contest, so I am scoring points for every correct answer. So if you would like to type into the chat what your answer is, I'm going to have each of these questions. There's about 10 questions, or actually 7 questions, but there's going to be a 15-second count. So I'm going to have a timer for each question. So once I finish reading the question, I will start the timer. If you're able to answer the question, put it in the chat. I'm going to basically allow as many people to answer as fast as possible. It's going to be a first, second, and third place. So just whoever is able to answer the quickest, depending upon the correctness of the answer, you can type whatever you want, whether or not it's correct or not. But the points will be if you get the answer correct. How quickly you get it put in, I will be adding all the final results to the video that I'm going to load up once it's finished. So if you are interested in taking part, just type in your answer to the chat. If no one types in, that's no problem. I'm going to put this up, and then others can answer the questions as they go. So we're going to move on to the first question. A Grand Republican archival dossier. Which crime family ruled the Outer Rim from a place on Tatooine governed by a committee of elders? Five seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The Hutt Syndicate. So led by Jabba the Hutt, they ruled by a council of elder Hutts who oversaw strategy and interfamily disputes, accumulating vast riches through smuggling and illicit business. The Hutts made their base on Nar Shaddaa, now Hutta's sprawling cityscape moon, often called Little Slugland. So a lot of this information you can find on Wikipedia.com. Alonzo, welcome in. So if you are interested in looking this stuff is available on StarWars.com and Wikipedia. I highly recommend going into detail about this. One of my facts actually goes into this, and Abby was nice enough to include this. All right, so we're unfortunately we didn't get any answers for that first one, so we'll just hold on to that, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay, what cartel controlled the primary mining operations on Kensal and fueled illicit substances to Coruscant using daring smugglers? Ten seconds. Whoever knows the answer, type it in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Pike Syndicate and the Spice Trade. The product spice is a catch-all term for natural and artificial substances ranging from medicinal to highly potent addictive narcotics. Alliance and rivalries. Allied with Crimson Dawn and Maul's Shadow Collective, waged multiple territory disputes with the Hutts, yet maintained regular sales with them through smugglers. Now, this is information that we're probably going to get a little bit more detail on in Maul's Shadow Lord. So for those of you who have not watched Clone Wars, I highly recommend you go in and look at Clone Wars, because a lot of this information is revealed in Clone Wars. We do have additional information about Black Sun and stuff like that that's brought up in other books from the EU. I highly recommend watching and reading some of the stuff, specifically Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. It's technically no longer canon, but it does reference Black Sun. The Pike Syndicate, we get a really good view of them in Star Wars Clone Wars. There's multiple episodes that involve them. So I highly recommend checking it out. And of course, Crimson Dawn, you get a view of them in not only Han Solo, the Solo movie, but you also, if you read Star Wars comic book series by Marvel Comics, the Pikes or the Crimson Dawn is actually a major player. So I highly recommend checking those out. It's really great information. Okay, moving on to the next. What terrifying armored skin beasts were domesticated by the witches of Dathomir, yet remained notoriously easily provoked? If you know the answer, just type it in the chat. The Rancor. Armored and physically tough enough to shrug up blaster bolts, features a massive flat face with a salivating, toth-filled maw. Symbiosis often lies in wait with an open mouth, allowing savage birds to safely clean its teeth. Behavioral and domestication. Inherently benign, but highly dangerous with a short fuse. Domesticated by Dathomirian witches via dark force magic. They form strict social hierarchies led by a dominant alpha. Rearing. Younglings are energetic and unaware of their massive strength, but easily soothed with chewing bones and toys, capable of forming intense protective bonds with handlers when properly socialized. Now, we get a lot of reference to the Rancors. The first appearance is in Star Wars Return of the Jedi, under Jabba's palace. We also see them in, get a reference for them in Star Wars Clone Wars. They also show up in Star Wars Bad Batch, and you really get a great view of them in Star Wars Book of Boba Fett, where he actually gets to ride a Rancor. So I highly recommend looking these guys up. These creatures are so very cool. The first time you actually get a lot of this information is in Star Wars The Courtship of Princess Leia. So this is the first encounter with Dathomir and the Night Sisters and the Rancors, beyond being just brutes and salivating predators. So I highly recommend looking this information up and reading some of the books. It's really great material. Okay, next question. Which iconic Imperial starfighter prioritized speed and mass production over deflectors and shields? Ten seconds on the clock. If you know the answer, just type it in the chat. CR Fleet Systems Standard TIE Fighter. Core engine powered by a highly efficient Snoller ionized reactor, and features a ball-style cockpit flanked by solar array wings, stripped to the bare minimum for functionality, just a cockpit, front-facing weapons, and a rear engine. The simplicity of design made them extraordinarily quick and inexpensive to build, prioritizing vast swarm tactics over individual pilot shielding. This was a standard clone era tech, Imperial TIE, and the other variants were Bomber, Interceptor, Avenger, Defender, and there's multiple other variants you can actually look up. Even an atmospheric design that we saw in Rogue One. So there's a lot of different variants to this. But as you see, Sinar Fleet Systems also was the one who designed the Sith Infiltrator, the Scimitar, that we saw in Star Wars Phantom Menace. So really, this is a really cool vehicle, and everybody recognized it. I mean, the most iconic is, of course, its twin ion engines, that when you hear that screeching, you know what it is. So I know that a lot of people are a fan of this ship. All right, next question. Which Fouling Run syndicate submitted to Darth Maul during the Clone Wars? If you know the answer, just type it in. Hint, I've already mentioned it. The Black Sun. Threat assessment. Black Sun. Species origin. Run primarily by the Fouling species. Canon. Clone Wars era. Absorbed into Darth Maul's expanding Shadow Collective power base following short negotiations. Which, for those of you who are fans of Clone Wars, you remember the scene where Maul and the Death Watch come in to the Black Sun's main base, and they say, "Why should we be involved with you?" And literally, someone loses their head. So I always thought that was a cool thing. Now, on the legend side, there once again we reference Black Sun is first brought in to the Star Wars lore through Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, which is led still by the Falleen, but it is primarily led by Prince Zixor, a close ally of Emperor Palpatine, and acted as a direct rival to Darth Vader. Now, in a tactical maneuver that Zixor had, he decided to attempt to undermine Darth Vader, the Sith Lord, by putting a direct assassination hit on Luke Skywalker, who, as we know, after Empire Strikes Back, Vader really wanted to find Luke and to convert him over to the dark side for Emperor Palpatine. So this was a really cool reference. I love that they actually brought Black Sun in, because I was really hoping that Clone Wars was going to finally bring in the Black Sun and we were finally going to get Shadows of the Empire as an actual story. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I would really like for it to happen, because we still have that era. We've already covered a little bit of the story for pre A New Hope. So we had that in Rogue One. We got Andor. We finally got the whole story leading up to the events of New Hope. Now, my little hope, which all rebellions are based on hope, is that I hope that Shadows of the Empire is finally brought into the canon, because we have that whole era between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi where we actually don't know what happens and how they find out about where, Han is. And also there's the whole aspect of the second Death Star. So there's a lot of stuff there that I'm hoping at some point in time it gets referenced, but I digress. Moving on to the next question. How do the galaxy's 3 most powerful syndicates compare in leadership, territory, and trade? Type in the answer in the chat if you know it. The Underworld Power Matrix. So this is the 3 major powers in the Underworld are Black Sun, the Hutt Syndicate, and the Pike Syndicate. Now, to be fair, there is an additional source that we reference for this, and that is the pirate clans. But the thing is that the pirates don't really have any kind of major organization, and a lot of them actually worked for all 3 of these power sources. And we know this because of Hondo Anaka's reference. He actually works with all 3 of these, but it's also on a basis of payment, which is the whole thing about the pirates, is that they would only work with one of these groups depending on how they were paid. And there's a lot of research you could do into that, but I'll get into that in a minute. Black Sun, leadership and species, the Falleen, the Hutt Syndicate, the Elder Council, and Jabba, the Pike Syndicate, the Pike species. Primary operations, assassination and political influence, the Hutt Syndicate, smuggling and outer rim racketeering, Pike Syndicate, spice mining and distribution logistics. Key territories for the Black Sun, the core worlds and Coruscant. The Hutt Syndicate, Tatooine, Varl, Nal Hutta, Nar Shaddaa. The Pike Syndicate, Kessel, and Obadiah. So these are the primary underworld factors when you think about Star Wars, which I think was one of the coolest things that George Lucas included in Star Wars was an underworld power. And we really see this in all 3 of the movies. The first time we see it is in the cantina on Tatooine, where they actually reference it, and you see the underhanded aspects going on with Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt, and that whole encounter with Greedo and the smugglers that and the other guys that encounter Obi-Wan and Luke at the bar. I mean, you really get that aspect that there's a lot more going on than just the whole thing between the Empire and the Rebellion. And that's one of the things that I thought was really cool about Star Wars, is that it doesn't just go the dark and the light. There's an underside of gray that is always included, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And this is a really good view of the gray part of Star Wars, is the three organizations. Now, technically, if you wanted to include the pirates, you could, but they don't have a really strong power base, though. In The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, you do get an aspect that the pirates do have a larger power base because of the chaos between the fall of the Empire and the rise of the New Republic, that the pirates have a chance to actually gain a foothold on the galaxy, but they don't have like a specific base of operations, and there's too much, conflatedness, and you really see this in a lot of the other aspects of Star Wars. And I highly recommend, if you want to research this, there's so much material to go through, starting with the Clone Wars and going all the way through. You really get that aspect that there's more going on. So I always thought that was really cool. Okay. And that is the end of the Star Wars quiz. Unfortunately, I got no response in the chat, so I will definitely post this up. I hope that a lot of people will be able to take part in this quiz, because I thought it was super cool. And Abby of the Dark Side, I can't thank her enough for coming up with this and working with me on it. It was so well done, and all those images were done. I know, BB-8, exactly. And I just thought it was really cool. And I really appreciate the fact that she went through the effort of actually creating this. So if you guys happen to do a look around, Abby of the Dark Side, she's a great, knowledgeable creator of Star Wars. She has her own podcast that she loads up on a regular basis. I highly recommend going and checking out her channel. And thank you all for coming in and hanging with me. If there's anybody who wants to chat, post up any questions you might have. I've got a few more minutes, and then I've got to log out because unfortunately I have to get ready for work. Unfortunately, I have to work on a Sunday, so that kind of sucks. But hey, in this economy, you gotta have to work where you can. So for any of you who are interested in my materials, I post up a Star Wars fact of the day. I'll be posting up a new fact tomorrow. I got to do a little research. I'm probably gonna work on that a little bit tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna have time today, but if anybody has any questions or anything, post it up in the chat. Star Wars is a thing I really love, and it's something I know. I've been trying to keep up with Star Wars as much as I can. I'm a fan of a lot of other stuff, but Star Wars is really my bread and butter. It's the stuff that I love more than anything. The only other things that I love more than Star Wars is Marvel and Transformers, which I don't know enough and haven't delved into those lores enough. Whereas Star Wars, I put my whole heart and push into it because I really enjoy it. The lore, the aspects of it, I really enjoy it. Scott, welcome in. For those of you who are just tuning in, my facts review and this quiz, I will be posting them up on the link on my profile so you can reference and watch the whole thing there. I'm probably not going to get it up until later today, but definitely log in, check it out. I will, as well as all of my past fact reviews, those are up on the link on my profile, so you can definitely reference them. I highly recommend checking it out. A lot of this is information that I got off of Wikipedia.com and StarWars.com, so you can definitely reference my material and fact check me. If you find something that I missed, please post it up. I have no problem with other people commenting on my stuff, as long as it's meant to be productive. If you're just going to post stuff up just to say that I'm wrong and you're right, then don't bother posting, because I'm not going to get into a facts argument with you. If you want to just give me some information that I didn't include, or that you want an have a constructive conversation about Star Wars, I'm all open to that. And I'm actually working with others in a chat group right now. We're actually trying to get a community together, and I really hope that for all of you that are big into Star Wars, that you'll actually look into it, because there is a huge Star Wars community on TikTok. A lot of people are involved in it, and a lot of people are passionate about their facts. Unusual, welcome in. So if you really love Star Wars and you really enjoy it, I highly recommend checking out all the stuff on TikTok, as well as all the information you can find on other social media, especially Wikipedia and StarWars.com. The information is great. I always like posting this stuff up because it's stuff that I know, and I know I can be confident and knowledgeable about it. So please, I encourage you to look into this stuff yourself, and I hope you'll all continue to check out Star Wars, specifically Maul's Shadow Lord, which once the series wraps up, I'm definitely going to do a few more facts about the references that come up, because I'm really looking forward to watching the series, and I'm hoping we get a lot more material about Maul and what happens to him before the events of Star Wars Rebels, which is where I'm going to take a lot of my facts after that, because there's a lot of facts that, if you have not watched Star Wars Rebels, Maul does show up in that, and we have his big finale in there and his final encounter with Obi-Wan. I highly recommend going and checking out that series. It's so good, and there's so much great reference in Star Wars in there that ties into not only the movies, but also Andor and a lot of other stuff that comes up. So I highly recommend checking that out. There's so much great stuff about Star Wars that you can reference. A lot of it is still canon. There's a lot of canon materials there, but there's a lot of EU and Legend stuff that is still really good. So I highly recommend looking into it and checking stuff out because there's so much great Star Wars out there. You don't have to be limited to just what Disney puts out. There's been so much material that's been out for over 16 years. There's been material that's been put out, and there's something for everybody. There's something for kids, there's something for adults, there's something for hardcore fans, there's people who love to read, there's books and references all over the place. I mean, you could go to a secondhand bookstore or any library, and you'll be able to find tons and tons of Legends material that's been available for years. There's more than enough stuff that you could find references on any website as well as any bookstore. There's Star Wars stuff that has been out for well over 16 years and well over 20 years. I mean, there was books and stuff that were available when the original trilogy came out. So I highly recommend looking through the stuff, finding stuff that you're passionate for, and enjoy it because there's nothing about Star Wars that's not available to be enjoyed. So thank you all for being on with me today. I look forward to seeing you all next week. I do this Star Wars Facts review every week on Sunday. So for those of you that were able to sit in and listen, once I load this up, please make comments if you enjoyed it or not. I will definitely continue doing it. I will keep posting up the facts during the week. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next week. Have a great weekend.